Welcome to our first episode of Boss Talk. I'm here with my boy Bomber the Farmer.
Whoop, whoop.
We're going to be talking about kind of how we both got started and what got us into this industry and doing what we love.
I mean, like with me, how did I start doing this? Back in 2009, at the end of 2009, I had a whole bunch of my homies, man. They had a lot of bread, and so 2008, we voted for the law here. And so, like, where y'all from in that part of the state, those already doctors were like, fuck it. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
they
rock
were
with it.
just-
You know what I
they were
mean? Like
doing it.
like with us, it was like more of a we gotta find it. So you know what I
Right.
mean? So the end of 2009, I was actually working with one of my boys, Chingo Bling, and I was about to go back to Houston, and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna try to pursue this cannabis thing. And I had a couple guys that were from the neighborhood that were like, man, we're gonna go get medical cards, and I was like, dude, how you gonna get a medical card? Well, I had some different, pain ailments and shit, so I drove all the way. I contacted a doctor in Southfield, and Dr. Southfield gave me the
Yeah, that's a
license
drive,
and shit.
too,
Yeah, bro,
from
from here, yeah, it's like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I literally jumped in my van and I drove all the way over there. And I always talk about the story on how I started Pure West and how I would pile people up in my van and I would drive you to the other side of the state to help you get a medical card because there was no doctors on this side of the state. It's crazy, bro. Like the amount of dedication that I've given this since the first day that I've been doing it. I mean, besides being hung over maybe a couple times, but you know what I mean? Other than that, bro, every day is like work, put into this. And any extra time that I have gets put into my family, man. And, you know, I'm really curious on like how you got involved. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, how does that like, you know what I mean with the cannabis shit, man? Like, how did you?
I mean, it was like an early age thing with me. My stepdad was a grower, and he was
Oh, shit.
underground grower. So, I mean, I remember
Boy, get
like,
to work. Get over
I
here.
remember
Pick up
like
these
he
buckets.
had like these Phototron booths. I don't know. I think it was called like a Phototron,
Yeah.
and he had a couple little plants in there, and I
They're
just
probably gonna have those things in like a museum and shit.
I
someday.
remember just being like fascinated with why it was so secretive. Like I didn't even know what the plant really was or what it did for you
shit,
at
dude.
that time. I just knew that it was like
Did it smell good to you? Do you remember it being real smelling good?
I don't really remember the smell so much. I just remember knowing that it was something that was not normal.
Yeah.
And it was to be hidden and not to be talked about. So I
That's-
was really interested in
That's
it.
crazy. And this is like out there where George Flint.
And this is out in like the Genesee County. We were like more towards like the Davison area, more in the country when I was in my middle age growing up, my middle teens.
You know, like with me, man, my dad was an entertainer, so I mean, I guess weed was always around. He was a drummer, did like Spanish music, so you know, he was always around on the road, and there was always like, you know, I mean, I'm Hispanic, Mexican. There's always, you know, a lot
Right.
of good weed around. I mean, it's just always what it was. I mean, and then they performed, so there was always guys like, here, you know, play this song for me and throw them some shit. You know what I mean? Like, and we was never done. We, you know, I mean, we paid
So
attention to
his
that
tips
stuff.
were
you know?
probably
Yeah.
drugs most of the time back then.
I mean, there's just always just the crazy stories that he would tell me, and not only that, but just you know the understanding of just you know being on the road and then traveling and lighting the doobie up and then possibly getting pulled over from the cops.
Yeah, the
and
risk,
Shit, you
I
know what
mean.
like yeah, because I mean, obviously it is what it is. I mean, I feel fortunate enough to be past that because I talk to him about that all the time. You think that was whatever, you know? It's like I just remember being a kid, being on the road and. You know, one time we got pulled over and he was just like, "Oh shit, like smells," and everybody was just like, "Dang," and you know, I didn't. You know, it's just weed, I guess. I don't know. It's just part of our culture, I guess, if that makes sense.
Right.
I think it's not until like the late '90s, or like early '90s, mid '90s, that I really kind of felt like, "Oh, damn, they're gonna lock me up for this shit." You know what I
Right,
mean? Like, I
right.
have
Once you
friends-
got a certain age, you realize there was a risk to it involved. Yeah, for real. Yeah.
What's the most weed you see when you were 18? You know what I mean? Like,
Me?
yeah, before you were 18.
I had a buddy that his dad used to go on fishing trips, and I literally think he would go to Texas, and they would get shit from across the border,
Oh shit.
and he would pack this like fishing boat, like a 12-footer, just a regular V-bottom 12-footer with a motor on it, a couple oars, a couple fishing rods hanging out of it, and there was like the floorboard in there, and they would just pack that thing.
No shit.
And we would get that brickweed, you'd have to
Yeah.
like steam it with a steamer and
Probably
peel
one
it.
of my, probably
peel
one
it
of my
in-
cousins and shit.
Peel it in layers and shit. You know what I mean? I mean that was
Some of it smelled like motor oil.
that
and all
was the
kinds
type
weird
of weed
shit.
that we had when I was 16, 17, 18.
Well,
You know.
I always tell we always talk about the time when me and my boys, we worked our first job. We were 16 years old, and that was the first time we figured that, like, we could put all of our money together, because we get like maybe $200-$300 checks, you know, every week and shit. And we would drive to Grand Rapids, and we would meet some of the other kids that were kind of like a little bit older, but they would get, and you know, it was Mexican brickweed, but it was just good. And then we would get some of that kind of corny stuff, man, you know, but it was just always so good. But that's what we did. We put our checks together
Yeah.
and go buy weed and shit. And then I remember the most weed I ever seen. One of my boys, A-Bear, remember one time he just like came through. It was a closet, bro, and he had gotten some work come in and shit. And he's just like, "Hey, come here, man. I want you to show you something." He fucking had the backpack full. I don't even remember how many, pounds was in that backpack, but there was just, in that closet, it was just so many fucking pounds, dude.
Tons of it stuff.
Bro,
in
he was
there.
just like, here, like, chopped a piece off and was like, here, take it.
It was probably, and a lot of people had so much of it. If they knew somebody that could distribute it, they were getting all of it.
Well, I mean, like with me being 18, a lot of like, the white boys that I grew up with, their parents grew weed, and that's what they did, bro. And
Yeah.
like, it was just always that they did it, and it was like, wow, like your parents are growing some White Widow, like.
I mean, that's what it was. That's what it was. Northern Lights and White Widow. I swear to God.
Northern Lights and White Widow. It was like,
and it
all
was
day.
Like golf ball. I remember it being like golf ball.
You know exactly what I'm
like,
I feel like they all traded like cuts of the same
no,
shit.
it was.
You
It's
know
because
what I mean?
any of the older crop there. I think a lot of it was from GM.
Was it?
A lot of the growers and the weed and the strains and the cuts that went around.
The other one that was really famous was
General Motors.
Was Blueberry was another one that was really, really popular to me growing up. But then it's just we grew like because where we're at. I guess I didn't see the other thing too. Like I guess there's no major city. I mean, yeah, Lansing, maybe Ann Arbor, maybe Detroit.
Yeah.
But I mean, like for the most part, Michigan's just real like country.
It is.
You know what I mean? You learn how to swim and you learn how to run roll a 4-wheeler and shit.
Yep.
It's
yeah.
fucking crazy.
It is. That's crazy.
My first shot times? Mine would be the San Francisco Cup. 2012 or 11? No, 2011. The San Francisco Cup 2011. I know I was probably one of the only few people from Michigan there.
I bet back in 2011.
Bro, I had opened up the club here, Pure West, and I remember John from High Times, who was Rick Kusik's assistant. We were going back and forth when we were talking, and he was just like, if you really want to get involved in this, you really got to be at this event. And so it was really cool to go out there. I think one of the craziest things was that I stayed in a hotel downtown because the festival was actually downtown. Nowadays, a lot of these cannabis events, they don't throw like anywhere like near downtown. It's like in like a crazy remote area or whatever.
Yeah, they try to make it like away from everything.
And it's like crazy because it's like at the time that shit was like downtown. So the same weekend that they did the first Cannabis Cup there in San Francisco, there was the same weekend of the gay parade. So like the funny story about it is like I got in late the night before, and I was going to the festival, and the guy, I was like going to the front, have the bellhop guy. I was like, "Can you give me a cab?" And he's like, "Cab, where you going?" And I was like, told him the address. He's like, "Oh, you're crazy." And I was like, "Crazy what?" And he's just like, "You know that we have the biggest gay parade in the world going on today?" And I was like, "Oh hell no!" You know what I mean?
Couldn't get nowhere.
It's like,
No
wow,
cab.
bro, it was just nuts. And then it's just, I'm a small town Michigan kid, man. A lot of culture shock. I mean, I'm not really, so accustomed to seeing two guys making out, or you know what I mean,
Right.
or guys dressing as dudes or dudes dressing as chicks, and you know what I mean, vice versa, whatever. It was just a really culture shock.
Yeah, it
to
was
me.
just like
It
bam.
was just, you know what I mean, and I had to. Here's the funny part. Why I say this is because I had to walk the whole entire route of the parade to get to the beginning of where the festival was where the parade started, and where my hotel was where it ended. So there was no taxis running, so I had to walk the whole parade route, bro. It was like, It's really, you know what I mean? One of those things where, like, if
Like
you
a
want
life
it,
experience.
if you want it, you gotta go get it.
Yeah.
So, like, I had to walk all the way over there to go to the festival. The other thing was I didn't know anybody there. So, you know what I mean? Like, me having to pass cards or, like, having to, you know, hey, what's up, man? Like, you know what I mean?
To
Like,
get a pass.
bro, well, no, I mean, I paid for a ticket and shit, and I had a medical card and everything, so it wasn't hard to get in. That's not what I'm getting at. My point of what I'm getting at was like I didn't know anybody. Like
Yeah.
that was the first time I met Dougie from Hitman Glass. That was the first time I met some of the editors, and then like I was just in awe to like see some of the guys win like cups because I was like, dude, you won a fucking cannabis cup, bro.
Right,
Like,
right.
bro, what the fuck? Like that's so fucking cool. Like, and we're United States. This isn't in Amsterdam, you know.
Yeah.
So that was like really my first experience in going to the Cannabis Cup. You know, knowing what it was and any experience of it, and then you know being able to judge. You know, that was the other thing.
That's cool. You got the judge when you went down there.
Yeah, dude. I went to go. I judged in Amsterdam. I judged in Amsterdam in the 25th annual. I judged, which was in 2014, and which was really cool because it was. I don't know. Was it 2013? I think it was 2013. 2013, 2014. One of those two. But either way, I got to judge. And it was a really awesome time because the High Times actually doesn't do this anymore. But if you're a judge, you actually get what they call a judge's dinner. And a judge's dinner means that every category, everybody that's selected to be a judge gets to go in the category and they get to discuss. And it gets pretty heated, you know, because you're sitting there and you're going to determine somebody's fate for the rest of their life. You know what I mean? Like, you're considered one of the greats of our time. And Loud Seeds, which was one of the guys that did our I think it was Loud Scott. I don't know, one of those ones, but it was one of those experiences where like you knew when they got on stage and they grabbed that award that you helped make that happen. And it was crazy because all three of us that were judges picked the one to win. Wow. You know what I mean? And it was like, you know, it's in that sense it says a lot about my palate. I actually even got to judge in Denver in 2015 for the Cannabis Cup when weed went legal there, and it was crazy because I got a whole other experience for that, man. But I mean, it's just like just being able to be part of the magazine. I think that was the part where I was like, wow. So I judged a cup in Denver, right? And the badass part about it was it's like I was going around with my kit and I was showing everybody, hey, this is what the fuck I got, whatever. The guy from Elemental Seeds had seen what I had, and it was just like a clear white, like straight white, snowflake white, man, like so good, bro. And like the one that we picked to win, which was from Dabalicious, and there's a lot of controversy on that award too. So my point of what I'm getting at is that we went to Elemental Seeds. I showed him my kit, and he was like, hey, dude, if you love that stuff, I got a pack of something, which was the honey bananas that we have. And the honey
that was part of that.
And was the part of the honey bananas that we had won. And that was the original thing that we ended up winning a cup with later. And you know, it's like how fate works.
Yeah, it's funny how it happens.
You
man.
know, I had to judge that cup in order to get that pack of seeds in order to win the cups that I did. Because that year in 2017, we ended up winning first and second for non-solvent hash in Michigan with that pack of seeds.
Yeah.
And then later on in 2018, winning third place with that pack of seeds too. So
yeah,
it's
that
like,
says something. It was like fate for you.
You know what I mean? You just being at the right place at the right time. You know what I mean? Like and knowing what you're. You know, it's like because when we go to the dispensaries in California or like in Oregon or wherever else we toured around in the world, we go and spend maybe like $1,000, maybe $2,000 in their fucking places, and people are like, "What? You're crazy." It's because I really want to know, like, with your palate, what you're tasting like, you know?
Yeah, you want to experience it.
Oh, dude, it's like, it's just being able to, I mean, like, it's like today, like, I got my Seattle cannabis.
I can relate. I think we flew out to California just to kind of see what was up with that. You know, we wanted to see what the hype was out there in Cali.
What about you, bro? Like,
I mean, when I started doing cups, honestly, I was vending out of a club. And I mean, I had the game on lock. I had lines of people that were just waiting for me to show up. I kind of knew I had something going, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't know if I was like competition worthy. But then there was like, you know, I'd heard of certain brands or so-called people that were competing, and I just was like, man, you know what I mean? I think I feel like I got to step up for Michigan, and you know.